let's open up with a community question. Jared, do you have something for us?
I do. In fact, Peter Bagel writes in asking, in the Vindication lore book, why is Tom credited as Big Tom Casual?
Oh, Big Tom Casual.
Big Tom Casual.
Because you are Big Tom and you are casual.
I can be casual.
Sometimes.
Do y'all remember, maybe we can find this picture. Do y'all remember that picture, the first picture of you two together?
I have it.
Oh, at the library?
I have it, yes.
Oh, I forget about this
It's
picture.
got Tom, what were you standing on?
I was standing on
chair?
like a chair or a box or
Is there
something.
any way to have this in
And
right
I
now?
think so. And Mark next
I've
to
got
him.
it.
And so it was the first time people seeing Big Tom Casual and next to Mark. And Mark, you looked half his size.
And I'm like 7'6".
It was phenomenal.
Yeah, they were like, dear God, is he in the NBA? Yeah.
He's so casual.
Okay, so what the heck is Big Tom Casual?
All right, why don't you start and then I'll unstart.
You'll unstart.
He'll rewind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, during the original Vindication campaigns, at some point, I was in Board Game Geek looking at comments about the game or something like that, and I saw something that Tom had posted and had written, and it wasn't actually about the game. I think maybe there was some type of dialogue happening or something in one of the threads, but then I kind of went down the rabbit hole and I was like, well, what is this Big Tom Casual? And there was some type of a post or something that he was doing regularly, something in the board game space where he was just giving his thoughts and ideas, but it was very kind of poetic and well written and thought out, and it was just kind of this discourse that I think he had
so
written.
Poetic.
It was a series of posts called Slightly Inebriated Reviews of or Thoughts on. And the premise was that I would drink a little too much and then write about board games.
Okay.
What's more poetic than that?
What could be more poetic?
I was entranced.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was bringing it. Let's just say.
Did you write one about Vindication? Was it about?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I'm curious what your memory is of it. So why don't you just keep going?
What my memory is of it is you were talking about your kids, in the tub, and there was like floating poo was like the first thing that I remember.
See how poetic?
It's so poetic.
Jared.
I'm sorry.
But I went further and just kind of was like, wow, there's actually some really amazing writing talent here, and it just kind of started to trigger my thoughts about maybe there's a collaboration available or something, some writing and whatnot. And it wasn't a typical like board game fan type of a thing. I just actually, having been in the creative industry for a long time, noticed some real writing talent, and so I kind of reached out and I thought, well,
You know what else he noticed?
What did he notice?
It was like the second day of the first Kickstarter.
Okay.
And the post was almost exclusively about the quality of the graphic design.
Ah.
Oh.
maybe I blocked it
He's
out.
like, wow, this guy's so poetic. Look at him write
Everything
about
he
me.
says
Everything
is so.
Look at your
Wow,
face.
this is okay.
Okay, now
Took a
I do
turn.
remember, Mark, you and I were together when we actually called Tom and we were on the phone with Tom for the first time talking about the idea for this lore book. Do you remember? I remember sitting at the stoplight.
Was that
and you
before or
and
after
Tom
we
on
went
the
to?
phone.
That was after we went to Borderlands.
Yeah,
right?
so the first thing that happened is I started it was an email or something
between the campaigns,
and then at some point I realized that he lived in Salem, which is an
yeah.
hour south of where we are here in Vancouver. And I thought, well, why don't I just go down there, because I know a board game store owner family, and maybe we could just hang out in their place and you could play test the game. And it was really kind of more of an effort, I think, at that point to just get exposure and get some feedback, and like, here's a smart guy, maybe he can help us bring the game home. And then we met and I was like, oh, this guy's actually smarter
yeah, we hit it
than
off
me.
right away.
Which isn't hard to do, but it was, we did. And it was just kind of like, wow. And then the conversation kind of coalesced into this thing where, gosh, he's really good with words, and I've got some background with images. Maybe there's an opportunity to do words and images together. So, yeah.
Yeah, we kind of
where it
became
started.
friends right away. Like we met and then like that just worked. And then we talked a lot in between the two campaigns about the second campaign, and then just continued texting throughout the second campaign. And then toward the end of it is when you guys called.
Now, to answer the question, which is like reeling it way back, Big Tom Casual was your BGG name, or
Yeah.
is that
Handle.
right?
It was at the time my BGG name and my Kickstarter name. I think it was just kind of like my public handle. But now I just go by my full name because I want people to know that
Who I
I'm
am.
what the heck, like my name.
You're a real boy.
I'm a real boy, yeah. Basically, but like if I'm going to be a professional in the space, like I just want to be me, as
Big
opposed to
Tom
like
Formal.
a guy.
Big Tom
There
Formal
we
has
go.
arrived.
Big Tom Formal is here.
How? I mean,
Yeah,
that,
what was that like for you, Tom? Just like posting stuff and then randomly having people reach like what happened?
There was nothing really weird to me about like Marc reaching out to me and us connecting.
People reach out all the time.
I mean,
when they see my poetic writing.
like I don't. You say that jokingly, but that is kind of the reality for me. Like I have known all these bands over the years, and like anything that I've really engaged with, like somehow has become a thing that I'm really involved in, and so like that wasn't really a trip. But what I remember most about that time was the actual experience of writing the book.
Okay. And this is the lore
because
book.
This
If
is
people who don't
this
know.
is just the silly little lore book in the Vindication box.
Yes.
It's just little bits of backstory for some of the characters and world in the game.
And it's awesome, and you minimize it because that's what we do as creatives.
That's fine.
But
Yeah,
it's
I can't-
really cool.
I can't even read it today.
I
mean,
read it today.
That's at this point, that's something I wrote 7 years ago. It's like a child wrote
Yeah.
it. Like, but
Still a
Small
child,
Tom
that's
casual.
I know, but I'm a better child now. I'm a much more experienced child. This child has seen things, but no, what I really remember was the experience of writing it, because at that point I was in a very corporate job, and I had sort of done the thing where life takes away my creative spark, kind of. Like I had settled into a job that I wasn't happy in, but I was on this very express track. Like, you work here for this many years, you will reach this position, and like you will, you're going to be in this upper management position. You're going to be set financially, like all good. Just do your time. And so I was in this place where I was telling myself the story of like, work is just this thing I do for my real passion, which is my family. But didn't realize how much I was dying to have just like let that part of me go. And I sat down and I'm working on the lore book, and I hadn't written anything other than just like corporate crap
and
in years.
slightly inebriated board game reviews.
Yes, and just silliness. And a number of things happened at once. One, I slowly started realizing, as this part of me woke back up, how desperately that needed to be a part of who I was in a very real way all the time. And that it was like, I don't know, it was in Tom's story tragic that was in a box somewhere.
Okay.
And so that waking back up was like a major revelation to me. Also, I found I couldn't do the work while I was drinking. And so I would sit down at night, and we didn't even have like a good real office space to write at the time. Like, we set up something in the corner, and there was an old computer there. So I was like in a nook in the kitchen, surrounded by, boxes, because we're sort of moving into a new place. And I started, like, I would get off work and I wouldn't drink anything at all because I had to be sharp to work on this thing. And the more time I was doing that, like, the more comfortable I became with not, like, I started becoming more and more aware of the fact that, like, I am really having a hard time not drinking, and I can't do this thing while I am drinking. And, like, so my getting sober, because if you don't know, like, I don't drink anymore. I had a drinking problem. But many things happened at once in my life for me to, like, have that breakthrough. But starting to work on that lore book was like the opening of that door, the first catalyst down that road of realizing, like, this is a thing for me. But the like reawakening of my creativity and realizing, like, this is what I am meant to do with my life, is be creative. there's a lot of ways where there's this beautiful thing about the fact that I was the first employee of the company, because I feel like I perfectly embody the like point that we express all the time of the company.
I think I was first.
Well, were
Jeez,
you?
Mark.
No. Keep going.
I went full time before you did. You stuck at Blue Blazes.
Hey.
So deal with that.
Do what we got to do.
Yeah. But like this idea that the idea of Orange Nebula is to unlock this creativity in people and inspire people to be in touch with that part of themselves and think differently and reach for things. That has been so potent, my experience.
I keep getting kind of waves of goosebumps as I'm thinking about the idea that, like, in Vindication, a big part of the story is that the island is awakening and like magic is like returning to the island and its people, and like the resonance that has with the story of you taking part in that lore book feels like it's freaking me out a little
there's
bit.
no question that I leaned into and amplified that aspect of it a lot, because that's what was happening in me. Like the story of the island very much was coming out of like, this is what's happening with me.
Wow.
Aren't we all islands?
Look at us go. Look at us
I
island.
still got goose. That's around 3 of goosebumps. It's fine. I'm fine.
You're fine. You're fine. Goosebumps are good. This is healthy.
I like this deep dive because, you know, some of that is what you hope for when you do a creative work of any kind. And a lot of times we just, you know, you kind of think to yourself, gosh, wouldn't that be nice? But you can't really verbalize or vocalize a lot of this all the time because it doesn't have context or relevance for a lot of people who just want to play a game or whatever it might be, read a story. But this is really powerful to hear every time I hear you talk about it, because I get a few more fragments and I think, gosh, this is kind of what you hope for as a creative going out, that your work will impact people, even in ways like the work didn't even do this. Tom did that, right? Like this was a transformation that happened with Tom, and this was just the catalyst for that. And so I don't know. I really resonate with that. It does kind of tie in, like you're saying,
Freak
to
me
this
out.
theme of vindication, which is, you know, the rest of your story isn't written yet.
And I think it's a really good example of how much like it doesn't always take a whole lot to unlock someone who's ready, because it always it's up to that person. Like they have to be in the place and they have to do it.
They have to say yes.
But you know, all you did was say, hey, do you want to write some lore for these cards? You know, and it changed my whole life. Like there's no way you could have known that. And that's not something that like you set out to do. I mean, a little bit, because that's who you are, but like
That's true.
if I just think about like what we're trying to do as a group and how, I don't know, pie in the sky it seems sometimes, like, oh, you're going to change everyone's life with your silly, but like, yeah, that happens. And we hear stories from other people where that happens, where it's like, we just said like, hey, you want to unlock your creativity a little bit? And then 4 people send us emails and games. They're like, I made this because of you. You know, it's like, but it was just a thing we said once. Like, it doesn't take a lot to really touch people.
We don't realize what's in us, because at the time I remember you being a little bit gun shy about it. You're like, well,
I'll try.
I don't know if it's going to be ready to be published, but I'll give, you know, I'm going to give it.
Yeah, I hadn't written in a long
best.
time.
And at this point you would have been like, when I have time, you know, like it's easy, like in my sleep I could do something like that. Not that there
But
would be
there's a
skipping of
confidence
steps,
that's
but
returned.
it's, well, and confidence comes with experience of just doing it, right? It just comes with time in the saddle. Once you do something 20 times, you're way more confident than, you know, twice. So
When I was out of practice, I hadn't done creative writing other than, you know, BS internet stuff in a long time. You know, I was very much in the corporate world and was a dad, and like my life was packed. I didn't have time for that.
But just like the bicycle, those like foundational like things that you do early on, they are able to just
It
pick
came
back
right
up.
back.
Yeah.
It came right back.
yeah, confidence comes from doing poorly, right? And if you're willing to do something poorly, then that's the only bridge to you being able to do it well.
It was also this really beautiful connection point between my wife and I. Because I would then bring it to her and I'd be like, here's, you know, and we would talk about it and she would edit it. She's a very good editor. And I hadn't really like that was a part of me that had been asleep for a while, and so it was like that was really good for us too, to just
To
be
open
like,
that up and show her
remember
there's some
this piece of
intimacy
me.
there. Mhm.
And then it gave us a thing to really connect over, and that was really special
It's
too.
really cathartic to do creative work, even if it's not something that's going to affect your income or, you know, the way that you're compensated. I think sometimes just giving yourself permission to pursue the things that give you joy by creating can open all kinds of doors that you did not realize were there.
To Tom's point earlier, I think many people are just waiting for that permission to do it. Like they have every piece of it inside themselves, but for some reason they're looking externally for that. Like, go on, you have permission. You know you can do it. Fly.
Hey, say the thing. Do the thing. Do the thing that you want to do. That, yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick break, and then we'll come back for our main topic. Sound good? Whoop, whoop. Outpost.
Hey-oh.
We're going beneath the surface with Orange Nebula today. That's what we're doing. We're not over. We're not at the same level. We're beneath. We are under. We are down below the surface with Orange Nebula. And Jared is on the ground. It's fine.
Look at him.
Border on the edge of
How
being
can you
offensive.
not do that? Look
like,
If it feels like we've strayed in any way of the narrative we kind of want to build and we feel comfortable about.
you'll push the camera over.
Is there transference available?
Oh, yeah. Come here. Whoa.
My whimsy level just went way up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And somehow mine went down.
I'm a little annoyed.
yeah.
It's fine, though.
And then after you were born, days got shorter. Ouch. Oh, I just got the look. I wish I hadn't said it now.
Yeah.
What's happening right now?
I'm trying to reread our introduction here so I don't say this in a way that is going to get me in trouble.
It's a dude it's a giant with a loincloth
All right.
and a bunch
Let
of
me
rocks.
Keep the
Quiet.
energy. Keep the energy.